This is Ministry Conversations. Join us as we sit down with ministry experts from across Texas Baptist Life and answer practical questions for effective ministry. We want to help your church fulfill the Great Commission fueled by the Great Commandment.
Welcome back to Ministry Conversations. My name is Clay Jacobson. I'm the director of the cooperative program, and my guests today are Katie Frugé and Linda Howell. I'll let y'all introduce yourselves and talk about what y'all do here at Texas Baptist.
Yeah, glad to be here. I'm Katie Frugé. I'm the director for the Center for Cultural Engagement, which comprises a couple of different things, but specific to this conversation, our affinity offices. So Texas Baptist en Espanol, African American Ministries, and Intercultural Ministries, where Linda gets to serve.
And I am Linda Howell, and I am the Intercultural Ministry Specialist for North Texas, and I serve with the Center for Cultural Engagement here at BGCT.
Cool. Well, today we're going to be talking about and exploring the whole idea of doing cross-cultural ministry, what that looks like in Texas, why that matters biblically, and what are some practical ways churches and leaders, ministers can do that. Before we dive in, though, y'all both spend a lot of time in different contexts that, Texas Baptist Life, we were blessed in having just a diverse group of churches that a lot of other state conventions just don't have the level of diversity that we have. And so I wanted to ask y'all, what's the most surprising or memorable meal that you've had maybe in someone's home or in a church context that is a little different than what you might normally get?
I don't know if mine is different, but it's a funny story, if I can go there. So my husband and I were having a meal with the seminary students. That's just a fun season of our lives where we got to live with the seminary students and kind of hear from their stories and what they were going through. And so this sweet couple invited us to come over during the fall to have chili with them. And so we came and we were breaking bread and just hearing about their vision for the future and where they felt like the Lord was calling them and how they wanted to serve in Texas. And we're eating. And kind of a fun fact about me, I'm a slow eater. I've got some biological issues that I have to go slow and I have to savor my food. So I get to taste a lot of the things that sometimes, like if you're just, shoveling it down, you don't actually get all of the things. And so we're eating this chili and I'm picking up some sweetness and some interesting flavors. And so just to be thoughtful and just to comment to the wife, I'm like, this chili is so unique. Am I tasting cinnamon? Like, this is really cool. And her color just drains out of her face. And she's like, I'm so sorry. I thought it was cumin and I was trying to save, put all this stuff in my chili and I thought I'd covered it up, but I didn't mean to put it in there. So if you don't like it, it was hilarious. And I'm like, no, I thought it tasted good. It's great chili. I think some people actually do put cinnamon in their chili, but I didn't mean to. But it was this hilarious moment where she was just trying to cover it all up. And she's like, it was an accident. I couldn't taste it anymore. I was like, girl, you are totally fine. Your chili's delicious. I love the cinnamon. This is great. So that's what I thought of when I saw that question coming up. I was like, oh yes, the cinnamon chili. It was fun.
I think with me, what I have found surprising whenever I've been to many different churches and in several different people's homes is the way that we eat around the world is different. So, in America, we sit at a table, we have fork and knives and spoons. And in some of our cultures, we don't do that. And I actually enjoy it more when I get a chance to sit on the floor with people and eat with my hands. And I just feel like it makes a different level of connection. I don't know if that's, I don't know. But I love the way that we eat around the world is very different than necessarily with a fork and a knife around here. So,
Well, kind of one of the things that as I think about this conversation and you guys being here, you get front row seats to seeing kind of parts of the state, changes that are taking place in the state that a lot of folks who maybe they've lived in one place most of their life, or we have folks that there are certain towns in Texas that there just hasn't been a lot of demographic change, but you get to see just this whole other side of things. And so I wanted to kind of get y'all's perspective on the change that you're seeing and why cross-cultural ministry needs to be on the radar for churches in our state. So I'm sorry, that was really vague. What What's some of the cultural diversity you're starting to see, or maybe you've had a connection with, as far as either churches already doing it, or people groups that you're like, yeah, I wouldn't have pictured this people group in this location in Texas?
Well, I can speak specifically even just to our convention and just the diversity that we have within it. I think it surprises people sometimes as you think of the Baptist General Convention of Texas. We have maybe an idea of what we think that looks like, but our convention is 47% ethnic minority. So that means almost half of our churches are non-Anglo in some capacity, and that could look different all across Texas in different capacities. And you mentioned those small rural towns. Even in those towns, you're seeing a huge influx of different people groups coming in. And Linda, you've probably seen that in some of the churches that you work with in North Texas, right?
I have, yeah. In some of our smaller towns, some of the production companies that move in there, like Jayson, for example, they attract a different community. And so there's a lot of ethnic diversity coming to some of our smaller towns across Texas. And those towns have been very good about embracing that. I've seen just a lot of openness to that, opening their doors to different cultures, welcoming them in, and then being very open to working alongside them as they develop a church, because a lot of times the population there is new. So they're developing a new church at that time, and that's, its own challenges. In American culture or in another culture, starting a new church has its own challenges. But I've seen some very welcoming and open arms for that, which has been very good.
It's an interesting time in Texas because, I hear oftentimes in church planning worlds and things like that, they say that, a church needs to look like the community it's planted in. And our communities are starting to really look different than maybe how they looked 10, 20, 30 years ago. And so this is a really kind of a cultural tipping point for churches in Texas to really take a look at their network and their community and their neighborhoods around them and say, do we look like the people who live in our neighborhoods right now? And if not, we need to address that and figure out cross-culturally how do we need to reach our neighbors right now.
Yeah, I've seen several different stats where Houston's considered now one of the most diverse. It depends on the statistician and the demographic study and which area of the country they're from when they publish, because that influences things. But top 5 easy. That it's maybe one of the most international cities in the U.S. right now. And we're seeing that here in North Texas happening as well. Why y'all have networks here at Texas Baptist that kind of really focus in on different ministry groups, and so Katie, can you give us an overview of that a little bit, and like what different affinity groups we have here at Texas Baptist?
Yeah, so the traditional term, I guess we use the lingo in the convention, is the affinity ministry offices. And so these are offices that represent different affinity groups within Texas. So you have intercultural ministries, which Linda's a part of, and that's about 350 churches. But conservative estimates, it represents about 80 different language groups. That's a conservative estimate. And then I don't even know how many cultures that would represent.
I'm not sure, either around 60, but
around
I'm not.
60 cultures, so incredibly diverse. And then we're looking at a little over 1,000 African-American churches, and then a little bit more than about 1,100 Texas Baptist Espanol Hispanic ministry churches. One of the fastest growing churches in Texas right now is the Espanol Church. And that's kind of a classic church that usually you would have maybe a Hispanic ministry or kind of side thing. This is a full body, piece of the church. It's just Park Cities in Espanol, or whatever church you want to reference in Espanol. And that's the fastest growing population that we have in Texas right now. So it's an incredibly diverse, rich grouping of people that's really trying to reflect what the future of Texas looks like.
That makes sense. What's so knowing that we do all this, what's the drive for us to be doing cross-cultural ministry? What's the foundation that we're operating from, either biblically or just missionally, or what? Yeah, I was wondering if you could provide that for us.
I'll let Linda weigh in on this too, but just off the top of my head, when I hear you ask that, two things come to mind. First of all, when we look at Revelation, we see every tongue, tribe, and nation professing that Jesus is Lord. And so we know that there is one gospel. There's not one gospel, for every different people group. There's one gospel. We are all united under the blood of Christ. And if this is what heaven's going to look like, we better get used to it now and see, on earth as it is in heaven. And so we're going to work towards that, especially as we know that's what the future of Texas looks like. Let's have a future where we embrace our diversity as a vehicle for worship versus just kind of a weird oddity of Texas Baptist or something like that, that this is a vehicle that drives us to say, look, just as in heaven is going to look one day, this is what our worship services look like. So that's one piece to it. And then I look at the ministry of Christ, and I think of the opportunities and the example that he set of cross-cultural communications and cross-cultural ministries. And I think of John 4, when he met the Samaritan woman at the well. And one of my favorite pieces of that particular passage is that it starts and he said he had to go through Samaria. Not that he accidentally went through it or it just kind of was on the way. We know through the biblical context that Jews did not go through Samaria. It was kind of the no man's land. There was a lot of animosity. That was not a friendly relationship. But Jesus had to go through Samaria. He had to go through there. He had to meet that woman at the well. And by doing that, opened up the gospel to an entire people group who had otherwise been left out of the gospel invitation. And so if that's Jesus' own example to us, I think we have a mandate to follow that.
That's awesome.
We also have the Great Commandment and the Great Commission. We need to love the Lord our God with all our heart, mind, and soul. And then we need to love our neighbor as ourselves. And so our neighbors these days are coming from all different communities around the world. And a lot of them are coming from really difficult situations. And so to bring them in and to welcome them in and welcome them with the gospel, walk alongside them as they're presenting the gospel to their own people group in their own language and help support them in that mission. We can reach people with the gospel here that we could never do overseas. There are people here that are from closed countries overseas. Mm-hmm. We can reach them with the gospel and they can take it back to their people where we couldn't do that. So I think we have a great opportunity to reach out to those who are coming with the gospel and make that impact. I hope we do that. I want us to do that.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, it's. I think we are at a critical moment, in Texas. I think maybe the greatest missions opportunity for the church at large is now moving forward for Texas. There's more lost people in Texas, I mean, as far as we know historically, than any other time in human existence. And so we have a great opportunity here. So with that, just want to talk through some opportunities and challenges. Like, the opportunity is great. What are some of the challenges of doing cross-cultural ministry well that churches have that can be barriers or just make it hard?
Do you want me to take
Go
that
for
one?
It, yeah.
I think that any time a church meets with another church, whether they're from the same culture or a different culture, there are going to be problems that arise. We have our space and we're used to using our space in that whatever way we normally use it, and we see it as ours. So sharing that space sometimes is difficult. I used to work with a church that on staff with the church that welcomed 7 different ethnic groups to meet ethnic churches, to meet with them on their property. And we always had, it's so funny because I think you run into kind of the same situations over and over again. The kids are always going to do something, that somebody's going to be upset about. Yes. You can't watch them 24/7. You can't watch them constantly and all the time. They're going to get away from their parents every once in a while, and they're going to make a little bit of trouble, and they're going to be mischievous. That's what kids do. So whether you're working cross-culturally or with just another church meeting on your property, I think that you run into those issues. Another one is sound systems. As crazy as that sounds, everybody's very protective. That's a lot. It's an expensive equipment. It's an investment for the church. And so sharing that sound equipment with other groups is just difficult. And then we all have different volumes that we like to play our music at. And some of our culturally, they play their music very loudly. And so
make a joyful noise.
they make a very, yes. So I think those are some of the challenges. Some of the other challenges are things that you don't realize, like how people show respect. For example, in some of our cultures, to show respect is not to look someone in the eye. And so we see that as kind of disrespectful. If somebody doesn't look you in the eye, it's either like something's wrong or you know, what happened.
Are you hiding something?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And for them, it's a way that they show respect. And so there's some cultural differences that can cause issues. The other one is not realizing maybe that language is a bigger barrier than we think.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
you know, when I was part of this other church and I was on staff there, we considered at one time trying to have everybody in the English-speaking worship service together and having translators. But then I think, okay, if we were overseas and we were going to a French church overseas, would we want our own church spoken in our own language, or would we want to be a part of an English-speaking church that somebody was a French-speaking church that somebody was translating everything into English for us, because there's the delay in that, and it can get hard. Yeah. And so I think language presents a bigger barrier than we maybe realize.
And to play off of that a little bit too, Linda, if I may, sometimes even if English is the first language or we can share a common language, words have nuance and meaning that can be a real challenge sometimes in cross-cultural communications. One example I give when I talk about this sometimes is I was once in a meeting and I was really more just a facilitator, just kind of bringing people to the table. And the conversation, the goal was to talk about how do we increase church planting in Texas. And so pretty straightforward, pretty easy thing. And we all sat down and everybody started really cordially. We're all on the same team. We all would love to see more churches planted in Texas. But pretty quickly, the tone started getting sharp. Well, that's not going to work. You know, that's not how we do things. And like real quickly, like it started becoming downright hostile. And I'm an Enneagram 9. Like I'm freaking out because I do not like conflict. And so like I am just going crazy in my mind. Like how did we get here? How did we go from starting off so friendly to almost a shouting match? And I realized pretty quickly that we came to the table with different definitions of what the word church means. And that the people at the table had very specific different versions of what a church was. And that was within a pretty similar cultural context. And even that, you saw how it would slip into miscommunications and misunderstandings. And so even when you have a similar language, words can mean very different things, and you can very quickly see it going sideways if you're not trying to have that open line of communication and brotherly love of saying, I think we got off somewhere on here. Like, I mean this when I say this, and this maybe isn't what you mean by that.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of challenges there. I mean, with that, I think of like, so I think it's in our minds, it's a given. We should be doing cross-cultural ministry. Why take the risk, right? If what's the reward in that? What's the opportunity? What do we miss if we don't pursue that?
I love this question because one of my favorite things about cross-cultural ministry, communication and ministry, and Linda, I'm sure you've got a whole different other like awesome answer because there's so many different answers here. But I think it opens our mind to see the vastness of the kingdom of heaven. Amen. That when we only work within one cultural lens, one worldview, the gospel is so limited, and the gospel really starts looking like my culture, my people, my family, and everything like that. And when we engage in cross-cultural communication, we engage in cross-cultural ministry, the gospel just becomes this enormous global thing that you realize, wow, this gospel that's been so transformative in my life has also transformed this sister's life who has a totally different story and background than I do, but somehow still connects to both of us. And that not only encourages my spirit, but it also to me speaks to the veracity of the gospel itself. That what other gospel can connect someone like me to someone so different, but still we're so unified on this. It just opens us up to how big the kingdom of heaven is in just this glorious way that I don't think any other message can.
No, I would agree, honestly, with that. One of the things that I get blessed to do, and you guys know I'm super passionate about what I get to do, but one of the things I'm super blessed about what I get to do is that I get to go into churches that not only worship in another language, but they worship in another culture. And they culturally see God in a different way than we do. I mean, they see his love and his salvation and all the things that bind us together, but they see different aspects of his glory differently than we do. And it has made the fullness of God to me, getting to see the different aspects of God that are brought out by these different cultures is just, we miss the fullness of God, honestly, if we don't get to worship with these different cultures. Several of the cultures that I work with, I think one of the ways that we are kind of missing the mark as an American church, and I say that gently, with love, is that we are not, as a whole culture, I'm not saying each church is not this way, because I'm sure we have churches out there that are, we're not a fasting and praying culture. And many of the cultures that I work with, they do, in January, 21 days of prayer and fasting. The whole church will do, seeking God's leading for that whole year. And then throughout the year, if they see a need, if they feel like they need to see where God's leading them, they've reached a crossroads, they don't know where to go, they will do another fast, and it may be a week, maybe 2 weeks, as a whole church. So just that one little thing. I mean, there's lots of things, but that's just one little thing.
I'm a visual person, so like I think in images, and I've heard somebody talk about this before, so I probably ripped it from somebody, cut paste. It in my mind, when I think of the beauty of the gospel, the beauty of Christ, it's like a multicultural kingdom that we all will live in and do live in, is like a diamond that's been cut. And so
that's good.
like you when you get a really good cut on a diamond so that the light refracts the right way. I'm about to mess this up. And it enhances the beauty of the diamond, right?
Yes.
The clarity, the purity of the diamond. I don't know all the 4 carat things or the carat things with that. I should. And so, but when I think about that, I think that's we have the opportunity to see more of the beauty of Christ.
Yes.
So our affections for Christ can be enhanced and increased as we get to see other people's perspective and culture looking to Jesus. And
Absolutely.
So I get excited about that too. Quick, this is gonna be like just completely off left field. What if you could, like, walking out of this room, choose one language that would like radically change ministry that you do? You could walk out of this room and know it by like to your core. What language would you choose?
Oh, that is so hard.
I know that for you're thinking of
you
5 or
work
6
with,
different.
so many different languages.
Yeah, I would be like, can I have them all? I honestly, I don't know that I can answer that question. Right off the top of my head, a lot of the cultures that we have coming right now are Burmese and Congolese are coming mainly right now. So either Burmese, because even though there's lots of different tribes in the Burmese people groups, they generally all speak Burmese. So that would be a good one just across them. And then Congolese, they speak Swahili, most of them do, but they prefer like Kinyarwanda, a lot of them. So maybe one of those 2 languages would be, I don't know, it's so hard.
Yeah, it's hard.
I keep saying when we get to heaven, I just hope that we all speak in different languages at the throne, and I think we will. And I just pray for like exact understanding. I just want them to speak to me in Swahili.
I'm pretty sure.
And I understand exactly what they mean. I just think that would be fantastic.
Oh, I love it. Mine is so boring compared to that. I wish I spoke Spanish. I don't speak Spanish.
Oh, that would be great too.
I think that would just be, especially looking at the future of Texas and just the growth of the Hispanic population. I grew up with a mom who was bilingual, and just seeing even that be just a tool that she would have available to her. I know we have Duolingo and all those things, but I am not bilingual. And so if I had to wave my magic wand tomorrow, but I am very optimistic that one day we will have the universal like translator piece, you know?
Yeah.
I'm
So
waiting.
I'm really big into AI and all
AI
that
is
stuff.
almost there.
So
It'd be the in-ear,
I'm hoping for that. So it's not quite just the magic wand, but I feel like it's kind of one step below. What would you pick? I'm curious.
Mandarin. It's just I think statistically, and so I'm like, if I'm gonna reach like a large population, I'm thinking, and I'm kind of I love research and writing on the underground church in China, and so I would love to be able to dialogue with some brothers and sisters over there that are ministering in that context, and so
that was gonna be my number two if I was honest.
Yeah. And so all right. What, like we've talked about a lot of different challenges, opportunities, that kind of thing. What are some examples of churches that you've seen that either work with other churches that from different cultures well, or do cross-cultural ministry within their own church well, that you might be willing to share?
Well, I have a church that I've been working with recently, and it's in a West Texas town. We won't say the town. And they were at a church that was not a good fit for them, to be honest with you. And they were there for about a year. And we started looking for another church. And God really and truly just provided the perfect church for them. And they have been able to, in their, should I say what culture they're from?
I think it's
Okay, they're from one of our African cultures, I'll just say that. And the church that has welcomed them in has just been, they have enjoyed each other. So the pastors have spoken at each other's churches several times. They are helping each other. This is an older church that has welcomed this African church in, and the African church is helping them in ways that they can't take care of the building. They're going in and helping take care of the building. They are helping their members, so they've almost become like one church, although they have two separate services. But they just absolutely have loved each other. They've had meals together several times, and they're talking about doing some worship times together, just doing like a worship celebration together. So they have just been, it's been a really good, like they really and truly are loving being together. It's been a beautiful picture.
You said one thing that I think is the common characteristic. I think of a couple of churches that do this well, and you said they're one church.
Yeah.
I think that's the common characteristic. I would say several of these churches have maybe different ethnic congregations like under the same umbrella, but they see themselves as one church, like one congregation, that they aren't like a separate church that just happens to meet in our building or something like that. I would say that's kind of a common characteristic, as you see this as this is our community, this is our church body, and all of its beautiful different iterations. And I'm not sure you saw that like maybe 20 years ago, where maybe it was more like, oh, this is just a separate church that just borrows our facilities, or this is a church that rents our building or something like that. There's really kind of been this pivot of several churches now across Texas who are really embracing the diversity that they can be and looking for ways to be one body.
Yeah.
What I'm thinking about churches like anyway. I think of a dear brother that's a friend of ours in the DFW area who has been a host to several different congregations and shared worship services together, and has taken a lot of time and effort and just relational investment in the lives of the pastors to let them know that he's praying for them, he's supporting them. It's not a transactional relationship. Because I think that's huge.
Yeah.
It's hard for a Western church context when everything is so time constrained, to invest in relationship. But for the rest of the world, that's what it's all about.
That is true.
And so I think of this dear brother, and I'm so grateful for him and his ministry. Anyway. I don't want to give specifics. So getting practical, I know a lot of churches want to aspire to that, or want to be able to engage people in their community that may look different than them, may talk different than them, may have a different language, and what are some ways that like just practical ways that they can connect with folks in their community that are different than them? I think of, so I'm in mid-cities, and when I go to the Y now, I hear more languages spoken at the YMCA than I did even 2 years ago, and most are, it's, for being from Texas, you would assume, oh, well, you hear Spanish, you hear
not
English,
necessarily, yeah.
But I'm hearing Punjab. I'm hearing different Indian dialects,
Yes.
Middle Eastern dialects that it's really kind of interesting and and surprising for me.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking of contexts like that. I think we'll see more of that in Texas. So
Yeah, for sure.
like, how do we practically engage folks from a different culture?
I would love to speak to that a little bit. So I think one of the main things with most other cultures is hospitality. And honestly, in America, we are more individualistic. We are not more community oriented. And so a lot of people, I used to teach ESL, used to be a co-director of an ESL program. And a lot of my students had never, ever been inside of an American home.
Wow.
And so that's, to me, that's a shame. Open your doors to them, invite them in. Be aware of what they're, you can Google how to show them hospitality for their culture. Like in some cultures, when you invite them in, it's like expected that you're going to have a drink for them ready, and you will serve it to them. If you came into their home, they would serve it to you. So there's just a few little tweaks that if you did for inviting someone into your home, that would just make them feel really welcome. Just talk to them. If you're not ready to open your home, just talk to them, greet them, say hello, start building that friendship and that relationship. Just be open. Believe me, they're probably wanting to meet people and to know people in their neighborhood, and they would love to do that. They're used to doing that. They're kind of surprised. They may very well be kind of surprised that you haven't come over to their house, They kind of just expect people to drop by. So it's just a very different mindset than we have. So just, being willing to do that, I think would be a really good first step.
Just exercising the art of hospitality,
Yeah.
just in general.
Yeah.
And not being afraid of all the things that you could misstep on or something like that necessarily.
Right. And I think, that even if you make a mistake, it's the intention behind it, and people know that. They know that you're doing your very best to be hospitable, and they're going to show you grace if you don't show it the way that they're, used to seeing it or whatever.
I think people innately can tell if you're excited and thrilled to host, even if it's, stumbling over your own feet or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, I think you can still sense that.
I can't tell you how many mistakes I've made, but people are always gracious and always kind. So, just the heart behind it is the main thing.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. I'm thinking about, we've got a couple families in our church that are Ethiopian. And so, one of the things that for us, we're trying to learn how to best love and serve them and be friends. And so announcing uninvited, just kind of out of the blue in their culture, they're used to that.
Yeah.
And so it's like when that doesn't happen, it kind of, they feel isolated and cut off. And for me and my framework, I'm like, that's just totally out of my comfort zone. Yeah, it's like, am I intruding? Am I encroaching?
It's almost rude in American culture, though, right? If you showed up at my house and I'm not ready for you, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
We would probably freak out and melt down because our house is,
we're hanging out on the front porch, and I will bring some water out to you.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's one of the things that that is so different, is trying to step outside of our culture. They're having to step outside of their culture all the time.
True. Yeah.
They're living in a very different, like 70% of the world is honor shame culture, and we are not that. We aren't. And so we're not the 70%. We're the 30% of the world.
So good.
And so understanding that what we look like is a little different than what they look like, and our comfort zone and their comfort zones are different. And just being willing to be a little bit uncomfortable because they're living in a completely different, their comfort zone is like not there, because they're in a completely different culture.
What are some tools or resources that you if you were going to just suggest somebody like, hey, this would be helpful for you to maybe equip you, or that you found helpful for you in navigating different cultures?
I don't know if this is a really helpful tool. I try to read pretty diversely from different news outlets, even from different places of the world, like, maybe a UK-based news outlet, Al Jazeera, different places like that, so that when I'm engaging, especially with people from a different culture group, just even being aware of kind of what's going on just globally in politics or in their land and things like that, has helped me kind of just break the ice sometimes, or even just be able to be fluent in understanding something that might be weighing heavy on their hearts, or just being very present with whatever's going on within just their family conversations and things like that. It's a really practical thing. I already follow a lot of the news, but especially if my digestion is only U.S.-based news outlets, sometimes it's slanted. It's not the full, complete picture. Yeah. And so trying to, as best I can, educate myself on global issues has been very helpful, whether I'm entertaining and talking with my Ukrainian brothers and sisters and trying to be aware of what's maybe happening in Ukraine in that particular moment, or just from another, from Burma or something like that. There's just a lot of global things that are going on that's easy for us in our happy little American bubble to not be aware of. Yeah.
America is the world.
Yes,
so
exactly.
that can be our perspective.
Yes.
And that can be the perspective presented if you don't go out and look for it. Yeah. Okay, so I'm terrible at titles and I'm terrible at names, so I would need to look these up. If we can put them in here later.
Yeah, maybe
I'll
we
can
put
in the show notes
in just a minute. So there are a couple of books that I would definitely recommend to people, and we can put them in the show notes. So
cool. Yeah, mine that on hospitality. Not that I agree 100% with everything written. We got a disclaimer on it and everything because we'll hear about that. Is the gospel comes with the gospel comes with a house key.
Yes.
Phenomenal book. It stretched us. We listened. We did the audio book during COVID, and it was so convicting. But just really pushing our understanding of what it means to be hospitable, and how that's actually an outflow of the gospel, that we do that. That's actually a part of loving our neighbors well, and inviting them into our lives. And so, that's that. Yeah. So, thank y'all for sharing. Is there any parting advice, or like if you had the opportunity to sit down with a church or a church member or pastor to say, like, here's some advice I'd give on doing cross-cultural ministry, what might that be?
So I would say any kind of ministry is not easy. And cross-cultural ministry, to be honest with you, is not easy. It takes you out of your comfort zone. But the rewards are great. So I would encourage you to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yes.
Be okay with having to negotiate and renegotiate things, if you have another church meeting on your property, or if you're helping to support a church, or whatever that looks like, if you're reaching out to a certain people group in your community. Understand that it's okay not to do it well or do it right to begin with, and just be willing to continue to work on that.
So good. I think the only thing I'd add to that is just with the expectation of the gospel becoming so much richer and more, just the fullness of the gospel really coming to light in that the investment's well worth it, the payoff of really being able to see how global the gospel really is transformative in ways that you can't anticipate right now. And so when we engage in this, it's really the limits of the Holy Spirit and what he wants to show and reveal to us. And that's exciting.
Yeah, God really did write his word to the whole world. And it does hit for the whole world. So
cool. Well, thank you all so much for this conversation, and sharing your wisdom, your passion, some insights. If you've got questions or want to know more information about what we do as Texas Baptists and working with churches of different cultures, I'd encourage you to check out our website, and we'll have some links in the show notes. So thank you so much for joining us today. So
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Ministry Conversations. Ministry Conversations is made possible through your giving to the Texas Baptist Cooperative Program. Have a topic you want to hear about? Let us know by emailing news@texasbaptist.org.